Hey guys, so this is a review of the Rough Country 2.5-inch suspension lift kit that I did on my 95 F150. And then I put 32 by 11 by 15, or sorry, 11.5 by 15-inch BF Goodrich all-terrains, the TA KO2s on the factory wheels. So what this kit did was I call it a 3-inch lift kit. It actually raised the front from the hub to the fender 4 inches because it also levels the truck, and then the backs it raised 2 inches from the hub to the fender, and so average that out, that's about a 3-inch lift kit. It's quite a bit higher than I thought. Actually, I was glad to see that, and plus once I put it on the bigger tires, it really gave the truck a good what I think is a really nice stance. It's not overly aggressive, it's just got a good solid look to it now. A couple things on the rears, they were pretty easy to do. That block in there is the 2-inch spacer block. Make sure that you put it with the direction of the axle and not perpendicular to it. I made that mistake at first and then realized that it needed to go the other way. Again, the Rough Country instructions were a little bit unclear, and then once I figured out that's what they meant, that made sense. So just jack up the axle, get the old U-bolts disconnected, use your jack and a piece of wood to get the leaf spring to raise up high enough that you can get the old block and the new block underneath it, and you'll be in business. And then doing the shock is no big deal. Shock absorber is pretty straightforward. The fronts were quite a bit harder to do, and having the right tools from the beginning would make things a whole lot easier. So you can see those rivets up there on the body support. It had those on the radius arm where all of the new bolts are at on the body, and I had to grind those off with an angle grinder and/or a cutoff tool. It's pretty hard to get to some of them with an angle grinder or with the cutoff tool, just depending on the head size that you've got. You know, trying to get up into here on the old ones with the radius arm in the way was kind of a challenge, and so you just have a lot of cutting tools. Also have a good, at least one, preferably 2 or even 3 really sharp 1/2-inch drill bits with you, and use cutting oil on them, or just really any kind of oil on them, just to keep the heads lubricated and keep them from overheating too much and doling out, because you're going to have to drill these out right here. Once you get those heads cut off like these here, you're still going to have to drill through the body so that these new bolts can go in, and that's a lot of work. And so having a sharp drill bit right off the bat would make things a lot easier. Let's see, there's the factory, there's the new shocks and springs. Those were pretty easy to do. Have an air gun with you too. I mean, it'll just make everything go so much easier. An air gun and PV blaster just to soak everything. You know, these trucks are getting old. You know, they're 20 years old at the minimum now. So a lot of this stuff's never been taken apart, and you're gonna have a hard time getting it off. This bracket right here is the new bracket that drops down the axle on the passenger side. And one of the problems I had was that I didn't have some of the right tools, and some of the holes didn't line up right. So like this hole up here didn't quite line up once I got this bracket in here, and it was because the top of this right underneath here started pinching in here, and so I ended up pulling it out. I had to grind the top off with an angle grinder, and it still wouldn't quite fit. So then I took the 1/2-inch drill bit and I had to oversize this hole just a little bit in the bracket itself through here so I could get this bolt to go through. And then this bolt here, you have to drill this hole 3 inches over from this one because there's no hole in the factory one. And that was a 9/16 inch drill bit, which I didn't have on me, so I had to go to the hardware store again, get a bigger drill bit, and then put the bolt in it. So it was a lot of little things like that that made the project slightly more challenging. The Rough Country instructions, again, they're not the best. The parts aren't labeled all that well, like the bolts and stuff, so you kind of just have to fumble your way through it. Go over to the other side here and show you this side. So this is the other bracket that you put on to drop down the driver's side I-beam, and it went on quite a bit easier, although you still, you got to remove the old one. The bolts are back, they're back there. That one wasn't too hard. You got to do these up here, those two new ones there. Again, not too hard. Everything didn't line up perfectly though from the rough country kit, so I had to oversize some of those holes just to get everything to fit. Same thing on the radius arms. And so that's where having a few really good drill bits would come in handy. You can use lots of oil. I also did the tie rods ends at the same time because I knew I was going to have to go get the truck aligned after I did all this. And they weren't too bad, except this one that was on the pitman arm, I ended up having to cut off right here, thinking I would be able to use a ball joint puller that presses like from Harbor Freight to get the old stub out. It didn't work. It actually ended up just breaking the puller. So then I thought, well, I'll just take the pitman arm off by getting this big bolt off here and then using a pitman arm puller to get it off. Well, that didn't want to work either, even after using MAP gas and everything else to heat it up. And the puller, it ended up breaking the pitman arm puller from AutoZone, and so I ended up just using an angle grinder and the cutoff tool for my air compressor to just cut the pitman arm off, put a cut here and put a cut on the other side, and eventually just get into it, and it cut off and it fell off, and then I had to put a new pitman arm on and all that. So that added a little bit of work to the whole project, but overall, some guys say just level the truck and you'll be good, and yeah, that'd be okay to do. It would probably look fine. I ended up having to do this, make this little cut here on the plastic, no big deal, to get the tires to work, even with the lift kit. But there's no rubbing on the radius arms at all with this kit, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. I like that it lifted the rear as well. Again, if you level the truck, you're only going to get maybe 2 inches of lift in the front, whereas this gives it 4 inches of lift in the front because it's also lifting and leveling it. So I'm happy with how it turned out. I'll go ahead and put a full profile view into the link or at the front of this video, so you guys can kind of see what the truck looks like now if you're looking at doing a similar setup for yourself. I highly recommend doing it. Just make sure you got everything in place when you're getting ready to go, and you're going to get dirty, you're going to spend some time on it, have an air compressor, have your tools ready, and it'll be a whole lot easier. So hopefully this will help you out.